Hi, I'm Bill Shaw, and this is an instructional video on the new Copemaster. Okay, so now we're ready to cope the crown template. This is the same way as we do the baseboard. The only difference is we have this miter cut instead of a straight one, and we're going to tilt the saw blade. What we want when we're done is we want the saw blade perpendicular to the wall. This is a cope cut made on the Copemaster, and if you can see, if I put the framing square up against the wall, you can see that this cut is perpendicular to the wall. So this flat that the saw blade put on and this section down here, they're perpendicular to the wall. So we want to set the blade, when the molding's in the work, we want to set the blade at this angle, okay, perpendicular to the wall. So in order to do that, we're going to put our workpiece in, our vise, the work vise in front of the saw blade. Again, we want to put it in deep enough so when we're at our deepest cut, which is right here, the short point of the miter is our deepest cut. When we're at our deepest cut, the machine doesn't bottom out. So right now I'm about 1/8 of an inch or so in deeper, so the machine won't bottom out. Lock the vise drawer, remember, don't over tighten it. Now we need to set the saw blade angle, and again it wants to be perpendicular to the wall, so we're going to loosen the knob in the back, hold the weight of the motor up, tilt this over, and we're going to take a square and put it up against the saw guard, and we're going to tilt the blade over until we get the angle of the square up against the bedding foot on the bottom of the crown. That's the long point of the crown. And then once we get it set, we're going to lock. So now that we have the blade angle, we're going to write the angle of 44.5 degrees, write it on our template so we have that for future reference. If we come back to this molding, need to do another 10 copes, we can immediately set it to 44.5 degrees, put our template in, make 10 more copes. Also, if you're going to go to do, this is a left cope, if we go to do a right cope, we're going to have to make another template, but we don't have to set the angle. We can just swing the saw the other way, set it to 44.5 degrees or whatever it was, and then freehand the right cope, and we're ready to do right copes. Something about left and right copes. I always like to do left copes for baseboard exclusively. There's always a doorway in the room to break your run, so you can do all left copes and just run around the room in that direction and you're done. The benefit to doing left copes for baseboard on the machine is that the top of the base is against a fixed fence, so we're referencing off the top of the base. So the profile, the detail is going to line up with each other. You know how moldings aren't always consistent in width? Well, if we're referencing off the top, if the molding is a little different in width, it's going to show up at the bottom, and the profiles are still going to cope into each other and line up. So if you can do it, do left copes for the baseboard. For crown molding, you can do lefts or rights. I like to do lefts just because that's the way I like to cut on the chop saw. And if I have the option when I'm installing, if the room is big enough, I'll do all left copes. I'll install the first left cope to a dummy piece. I'll work my way around the room. When I go to install the last piece, it's coped on the left end. I'll slide the butt end behind the first coped piece and snap the other end in, leaving it a little long and snap it into position. All left copes, you don't have to do the double cope. When you do go to do a double cope, let's say you're doing a coffered ceiling, the pieces are too short to slide in and snap in place, the last cope you have to double coat. What we're going to do is make all of the left copes first, install 3 pieces in each bay. The 4th piece to go up is already coped on the left. We're going to make our right template. We're going to put it in place. Now it's critical that your miter cut is correct, because if it's too long and you reference off the long point to make your cope, the cope's going to stop where it's supposed to. Let's say in this place 3 1/8 inches, but your saw cut went too far, then that piece is no good. So your miter cut needs to be perfect for your template and for the double cope, the second cope on a double cope. The miter cut needs to be perfect so we can reference off the long point, and the Copemaster is going to trace the template and set the cope at the right depth, and it's going to clean off all of the miter cut on your piece. So it needs to be, the miter cut needs to be the right depth or a little bit short, but not long. One of the major benefits of the Copemaster is if you are doing a coffered ceiling and you get your length for your double cope, and when you go to install it, short pieces, you can't spring them into place, they have to fit. And if it's just a little bit too long, you can bring it back to the Copemaster, use your gauge block, reference the piece, slide it in a 32nd of an inch deeper than your gauge block is indicating, run over your template again, take a 32nd off the whole cope. You can do that until the molding just slides in place. You can keep trimming that thing down until it just slides in place. That's really hard to take a 32nd or 16th off a cope that you've already done other than the Copemaster. But you're just going to trace over the template, take that little bit off, and you're ready to go.
For crown or any other sprung molding, you need to set the blade perpendicular to the bedding foot that sits on the wall. Here is a finished cope that clearly shows the blade cut is perpendicular to the wall. To tilt the blade, loosen the knobs on the front and back of the saw carriage, being careful to hold the housing, as the weight of the motor will tilt it quickly. You can then use a small framing square to adjust the angle. As an alternate to a framing square, you can use a magnetic welder square. The motor side faceplate is steel and will hold the magnetic square in place, making it easier to set the angle. Now you know the blade is perpendicular to the wall. For future reference, look at the angle that's on the protractor and write it on the face of your template. So next time you go to do copes with this particular piece of trim, you will be able to set the proper angle right away. Now that the angle is set, we can create our template. You need to select a nice flat 12-inch long piece of molding for the template. For flatness, check it with a straight edge across the back. To check for twist, place the molding on a flat surface and press on opposite corners. If the molding rocks, the piece is twisted. Spray paint the end of the board flat black and let it dry, and then cut your 45-degree bevel on the painted edge. This 45-degree cut is very important. Place the template stock in the vise in front of the saw blade, about 1 inch or less in front of the edge of the vise to the deepest part of the bevel cut. Pull up on the movable vise jaw and push down on the workpiece as you tighten the vise. Once the jaws make contact, tighten just a quarter turn more. With the piece secured, you can begin the cut. Turn on the light and make sure the blade is free from contacting the wood, and then start the motor. After hogging out most of the material to within about 1/16 of an inch of the black line, use the magnifying headset and remove the wood up to the black line. It is important to do this as accurately as possible. It takes more patience than skill. The better your template, the easier it will be to produce perfect copes every time. Backline. Backline. Once you've finished the cut, you can sand the edge with 100 or 120 grit sandpaper, being careful not to remove the back clearance created by the saw blade. Sand with the curvature left by the saw blade. Then apply wax for a smooth glide on the template.